Hi everyone, welcome to the demo of Tutorial 2 Group 5. We have the Glow Air Hockey application, and I'd like to show you a couple of updates that we have going on. First of all, we updated to have a main menu. So what our main menu does is it takes the input of a player and a color for that player. So any of the basic colors will work for this. Any complicated colors will not work. So when you use it, just stick to basic colors. If you enter an invalid color, I'll show you what that happens at the end of this video, so hang tight. If we tap the button for controls, we get a message that says use the arrow keys for player 1, which is at the top of the screen. Our first player will be at the top of the screen. The board does show vertically. And use WASD for player 2, bottom of the screen, which again, using that vertical screen, we have player 2 on the bottom. The game is over when one player reaches 7 points. And lastly, press P to pause and unpause the game. When finished, we can simply press play and our game will start. As you can see, both players can play at the same time. Both of our paddles move independently. The ball is automatically colored red. And you can also notice that we have a glow effect. It's called drop shadow. It makes our hockey table really have that air hockey glow, and which I think is really cool. The paddles also have this effect. And as you can see, when a player scores, it has that player's name, and it also shows the upcoming score. So that updates every time somebody scores until the player reaches 7. Just a couple of extra notes. I would like to say that we updated our Java doc comments, and we have updated a more thorough README file as well. We attempted to do more object-oriented comments or concepts, and we did throw some exceptions as well. So that kind of displays most of the updates that we did for our demo 3, and covers a lot of the feedback changes that were suggested. So as we get towards the end of our program, I'd like to point out how when we end the game, we are prompted to see if we want to play again, and if we go ahead and click that, we can be redirected back to the menu. Here you can see an example of if we plug in an invalid username, leave it blank, or if we plug in an invalid color, we do get that drop shadow effect again in red saying that it's invalid, or green if it's valid. And you can even see in the little menu there that it describes that the username must be between 1 and 10 characters, and there must be a valid color. The code behind this is a try-catch, which is nice because we wanted to include a try-catch in our program. Another quick bonus is that we also have updated our JUnit test to work with our puck class. So that is a nice little bonus that we have included there. And we're pretty excited about it. Hope you enjoyed it. Alright, So, in this bit, I will be explaining what all of our classes do. I figured best to start with the classes just to kind of show how many there are. We have our main class right here. Of course, application, because main extends application, right? We have table, which is essentially our box, or what our air hockey is functioning on. We have the puck, we have one for the player, and then over here we have a menu, which is quite helpful. That's all of the buttons and such that help us name our players and define the color of the controller, which is down here. This over here is the updated puck test that works for this class here, puck. So this is the menu class, and that's basically it's like the first thing you see. So we have our public class here, menu extends pane, which is obviously the box function of JavaFX. We have all of our buttons, text fields, labels, hbox, bbox, color, string, etc., etc. All here listed as variables and private variables so that they can't be changed with a final integer of width and height. We have our methods in here, set screen, red menu, etc., etc. And what they're doing is they're setting up for our menu box and the height, the button size, etc., etc. And once we get towards the bottom here, we can see more if statements and our try catches, which would be for our border glow. So this one is green border glow if the color is valid, and this would be else. The catch exception, right, would be red border glow. These are getting the input from the user, so the names and the colors, and using them later. This is our table class. So it is basically kind of setting the box and the borders to where our puck can go and where our paddles can go. So we have our width, our X and Y centers here, the goal size, and the defaults for both of the players where they start, and the necessary score that they have to win. So we obviously have our puck and our two paddles here, and we're just kind of getting and setting up for what needs to be done for the table. And if we get farther down here, we can see the if statements for if they get a goal, then where to reset them to, and to reset them back in the middle. This is for velocity, for setting velocity, and the puck, resetting the paddles after one has scored, and how to apply friction. The updates for paddle positions and where to use them with the delay and the velocity, etc., etc. And paddle collision. So where it touches on the paddle and where it should return. Yeah. So it's just adjusting velocities, setting velocities, making sure everything is in the right coordinates, and collisions for this. This is the table. And here we have the controller class. So this class is kind of short, as you can see, but basically what it does is for every press of the button, so for player 1 it would be the arrow keys, and for player 2 again it would be WSAD. And for each of these presses it changes the velocity of the y coordinate or the velocity of the x coordinate. So for example, if player 1 wants to go up, it changes, the press of the button changes the velocity of y minus 1, the acceleration, and down would be the opposite, left basically the same except with y, and here we go, right, again the same as up here. And then these are the exact things here except for different buttons, and obviously for controller 2 and not controller 1. So fairly simple, fairly straightforward, easy controller. Alright, next on the list we have player. As you can see here, player extends circle, and that's because it's the circular paddle. Here we have our variables here. We have the color, the velocity, the x and the y, the center, and the drop shadow, of course, to give it that border glow, which is really nice. We have things that don't change, would be size, mass, velocity, acceleration, etc., etc., and our main constructor here. The farther we go on, the more that we see the getters and the setters for the velocity. I guess these are all getters. For the player's velocity and position, and of course the score down here. We want to get the center of the circle so that we know how far out it should bounce from the border in the middle and also around the edges of the table. Here we have the getter for the border's glow, which is again drop shadow, and it returns here player. Right, we have the setter for the player's name, color, border glow, position, velocities again. And right down here, we have the updates for the player's score. And it, of course, prints a message and pauses the game. For only 5 seconds, though. And this is the player class. Next up here, we have the puck class. So puck is very, very similar to player, just slightly less complicated, because instead of being moved around by controllers, it's just being moved by the bounce. So here we have, again, our variables, x, y, velocity, and then the ones that don't change, size, mass, velocity, friction, color, etc. We set the color default to red here. And again, this is the constructor. We have the size and the drop shadow, the colors, the glow. Here, this constructor will be used by certain getter methods to limit the private leaks while retaining the necessary values, which is incredibly handy given what we're dealing with. We have the getters for the position and the velocity, just like we had for the player class. Again, very, very similar. We have a couple of setters here for the position. And then when we get down here, we have our math, if you call it, or whatever, to keep the puck inside of the table. And it also changes the velocity. If it hits on one of the edges of the table, then of course we have it change the velocity so that it bounces correctly. This is for when the puck collides with the right wall, and then we have the left wall up here, the bottom wall, and the top wall. And then this one would update the position based on the delay between each of the frames, which is incredibly handy. So this is the puck. And last but not least, we have our main function, and it is so long for good reason. So the main class here, it extends application, and then it's just setting these variables here. We have quite a few. Here, this is the timeline to call the event handler every 10 milliseconds to update the table so that we get real-time results. It's not just stuck in one place forever. Here we remove the score after we show it, so it just doesn't stay there forever. We have our controller. Here we're setting the controls, so handy stuff. And then here we have we're handling all of our events here. So for case up, case down, left, right, all of these are for controllers. So W, S, A, D, and then P obviously is for the pause. So this is where this gets initialized. We have our create table up here, obviously. Updating game so that the friction isn't delayed. The puck, updating the paddle and the puck position. And this is the glow, obviously, for the borders, and for this would be for the main menu, where if you enter an invalid color or invalid username, then it would print red, and else it would just print green, which is nice. This is just the background. Here we have, again, red, and then player 1's goal and player 2's goal is different. The center line. All of this is just setting up for table, or for the black background, I guess. We can create labels here, and we just have a lot of labels, really. Here is the display score method. So we're just displaying the score here, and then we're removing it afterwards, after we're done looking at it. Again, just a method for font. This is for after the game is done, if you want to play again. It has a button that you can click that resets it. So this is our fairly lengthy main function. I know I kind of went through it a little bit fast, but yeah, it just covers basically what's in all of these methods up here. And very last is our puck test. Now, it may not be necessary to go through this, but it's just a bit of a bonus that we had that we updated. So we're just, again, testing for colors, constructors, testing the velocity, and we're testing to set X and set Y for the puck. So fairly simple, very easy to understand, just testing to make sure that it's red, or testing the set color. Yeah, fairly straightforward. Testing velocity, testing the set. Alright, and I think that's all. Alright, so here we are going to run the JUnit test. You can see from the previous video that we had, where I kind of explained what it does is checking for the test constructor for color, the test set color, the constructor for X and Y, set velocity X, velocity Y, and test set X, test set Y. So we're gonna go up and run it here in a bit. And yeah, you can see that it passes all the tests with no errors, and there are all of our test cases right there.